starting the mixer in five, four, three.
Welcome to the Save One podcast, where we share testimonials of overcoming inner turmoil and tackle the tough topic of common mental health struggles. Our goal is to create a community of believers who support each other through camaraderie, understanding, and love by revealing the secrets we so frequently try to hide from others. You are never alone. All right, hey guys. Today we got Michael Williams with us. We got Thomas here. This is also going to be our first time that we are live on TikTok. I believe it's shared over to some of the Facebook and some of the other stuff. So if you're joining us live, we really appreciate it. If not, and you're watching this in a few days, then really appreciate it. Most of all, please remember to like it, share it, subscribe to it so that we can continue to reach more people. So today we got Michael Williams. We're going to dive straight into what's going to be a pretty amazing testimony and a journey that has led him to know Christ better and to do some interesting stuff coming up in the mission field, it sounds like, as well. So, Thomas, you got anything before we jump into his testimony?
Man, I think you covered most of it. I'd like to thank everybody that's been watching, all the support. It's been amazing to see the effect of what this thing does out there in the world. It's super humbling, and I just want to put a disclaimer out. This is in no way, shape, or form any type of advice, for therapy or anything like that. But it's just evidence of what the Lord's been doing in our lives and our friends around us. So, with that being said, I think we can jump right in to what you got for us today, brother.
All right. Yeah, it's just where to start, man. First off, I want to thank y'all for giving me an opportunity to come in here and share a little bit about what the Lord Jesus Christ is doing. It has done for me personally. It's been a pretty crazy journey to get to this point. A lot of ups and downs, and but yeah, I mean, I guess the next thing I do want to say is that some of the story might be a little messy, it might be a little ugly, but it is just part of a journey of a bunch of chaos in a sinful world, where I made a lot of bad decisions, and I just want it to be known that this is, of course, the being told with the hope and belief that is going to glorify the Lord Jesus Christ and His power to redeem and restore, no matter what you've went through. So
that's right.
I guess I'll just start at the beginning.
Absolutely.
So, I'm originally from Florida, so I was born into a family, mom, dad, two brother and sister. I was the youngest. And I guess everything from the outside looked very, very normal. We were raised in the country, didn't have a lot of money. But I guess I would say that we were pretty normal, if normal is dysfunctional, dramatic, and a bunch of issues in between there. Yeah, it's pretty normal, right, with the way the world is today. But, growing up, I just remember I was very hyperactive. It was quite annoying looking back at it, like very pestering. And, one of them kids just kind of, anyways, God's graced me with a bunch of quite a few kids now that are all also hyperactive. So, it's awesome, and at the same time, it's like, He was equipping me for now, for this time right now, but anyways, my we were all homeschooled, so my parents decided to homeschool all of us, and we were raised in kind of a legalistic religion, a Seventh-day Adventist, and so we went to church, and nothing at church, what we looked like at church and what we looked at at home were total different things. And my mom did the best she could, but my dad worked a lot, was gone a lot. I mean, he came home. We had a lot of good memories, a lot of good times, but the in-betweens were just chaotic. There was never consistency. So that just left a void. I remember always wanting to go to work with my dad, always wanting to do things. And my older brother was always always the one getting to go do all that stuff, and I just always felt like this father hunger, this desire for acceptance from my father, and that just continued to breed, and there was never any times beside, my dad was just doing the best he could, like I see that now, but at the time it just produced a gap, a void that I could never really understand, and on top of that, when I was younger, very young, I got out and went down the street, and there was some abuse that happened with a neighbor, and some things happened when I was very young. And why I remember it, I'm not totally sure, but that played in some of that acceptance and some of that void too. That I was sexually abused at a very young age, and that played a big role in my my inability to receive good love, or even know what it was, and also played a big part in some of the vices that the devil would use later in my life to make me feel like I was loved. So there's some like crucial parts in my childhood that that really sent me. Not at that point. They were, the way I kind of look at it, the devil's very good at telling you what you're not. And so like he instilled those seeds, and at a young age, he made sure to put those seeds in there that would later, which we'll get into in a little bit, send me down a road of addictions and different things, and so I was very confused, not only in how I was to receive love, but how I was supposed to give it. The things I saw at my house, my dad was very verbally abusive. There's a few times he got off the handle and, spank us with some switches. It'd be, I guess in today's society, might be considered abusive. I don't know if it really was all that abusive in nature. I mean, it was in the sense that it was out of anger and it was compulsive, and there wasn't much discussion of why. It was just, just some, anyways, like I said, he was doing the best he could with what he had. He had his own vices and stuff that I was not aware of at that time. But, a lot of that played out. We were in that home, in that same household for till I was about 12. I remember in that time, like, in that searching for my dad, it's kind of funny that the neighbor was a single mom and a younger son that I used to go hang out with. I remember she got a boyfriend that came at one point, and I don't even remember his name. I want to say it was Jesse, but the name doesn't really matter. I remember going over and hanging out, and he was like this buff Italian guy. And I remember he'd always be out like bench pressing and drinking Ice House beer. And I used to be like, man, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. And he was a carpenter, and like they were building this big deck thing around this above ground pool in their backyard. And he taught me how to read a tape and taught me how to pull measurements, taught me how to do all this stuff, right? And he just got out of prison. But that was the role model that I ended up looking up to, was that neighbor. And it wasn't a long period of time. He ended up like getting into something, shooting some guy, and like ended up going back to prison. Like all this stuff happened. So there was only like maybe a 5-month period where he was that little influence a couple times, but that made such a drastic impact on my life. Like that was really what formed a lot of my perceptions of who I was going to be later. Like now that I look back at it and can see it. And, so all that said, man, we went through that period, and then some other things happened. Dad got into another business, and anyways, at about 14, my family ended up splitting up. My dad got put in jail in another country, and we got evicted from our house. And so now we're just like, all this stuff is transpiring at like 13, 14 years old.
Let me ask you this real quick before we go down into that age period, because there's a lot of people that have struggled with abuse as a child.
Yeah.
Can we go into that a little bit, and just both from the standpoint of advice you have for people who have been through it, but also, and from my side of the world that I get to see a lot of times, is this is way more prevalent than people know or have any clue about. If you're in the law enforcement community, you hear and see it a lot, but it's extremely prevalent. It's one of the reasons I'm so protective over my own children. So can we just kind of talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Dealing with it like as it was happening, as I was so young, I don't think the totality really what transpired really set in. When I was about 7, I remember telling my sister a little bit about some of it, and then but still, again, it was just kind of like, oh yeah, right, like how do you even remember that type situation? And so there was a lot of years where it was suppressed. I don't know, maybe I had a feeling like I did something wrong, or to be honest, there hasn't been a lot of talking about it. I've shared it with some people in certain situations. So to give advice, at that age, what I was dealing with, I didn't really know it. Like I said, it just sent me down. If it felt good, I felt like it was love type situation later on in life. But just dealing with a lot of that, and then it got to a point when I got a little older that where it just seemed like it was kind of like a dream. Like, did it really happen? Type of situation. And then you start questioning. It's been so long and time, and the reality is it did happen. You just start coping with things because you suppressed it so long, and then you just you've built up these beliefs of what we're going to call as a human survival to make it through and be accepted and do things, and it is advice. I would say get honest with somebody. It doesn't have to be a lot of people, and it doesn't have to be gruesome details. It could just be like, hey, this happened. Can you maybe help me just work through some processes of where to go from there? Because there's a surface level of just acknowledgement, and then it gets a lot deeper into some things that you might stuff down, and then things that are piled on top of that. And before you know it, you get to a point where you don't even realize that was really the root of a lot of issues. So, advice would be acknowledgement, or just from my experience, not telling anybody to do something, but it's not going to hurt you, but acknowledgement that it happened, and then, getting somebody that you can trust to confess whatever happened, even though it's not your fault, just to let somebody else know, and then have some, finding that person could be difficult, but you just got to be bold and just really get honest with what happened, and understand it wasn't nothing that you did that caused it, and it's not. It could feel shameful. There's a lot of shame and guilt and different things that are not rightly placed that go along with it to get over it. But
That's understandable, and I would say also the other thing I want our listeners to, when we're talking about child abuse, especially sexual abuse, is if you have children, be conscious about who they're with, what they're doing. Talk to your kids. I know a lot of stories of situations like that because of my career. I hear a lot of it, and oftentimes it's somebody you would not expect. Oftentimes it's a relative or a family friend or someone, and so I can just tell you that it is a lot more prevalent than anyone knows or really wants to accept. So just a very important note right there of just be conscious about that with your own children and guard them. That's part of a responsibility as parents. So, but yeah, we can jump back into that 14-year-old kind of age. And
so going into that time, like I said, I was homeschooled. I was not that I did very good. I had learning issues. I couldn't read until right before at 13 years old. First time I started really connecting the dots and reading and all these things. So I felt like very inadequate. So I wasn't socialized very well because the homeschool side of things back then was very different than it is now. And so I felt like, looking back, I was not socialized very well with other kids besides a couple kids at school. And I was kind of sheltered because we lived in the country, so it just wasn't a lot of demographic of people to hang out with. And so when all this transpired and we got thrusted into the streets, We ended up living in a hotel for a little bit. I mean, when I was 14, I went and got my first job at like this little Philly cheesesteak shop. I could work like 16 hours. I don't know, maybe it was 12 hours. I remember I was in there on my birthday getting a job. Like, I was like, all right, I'm going to have to be a man now. It's me and my mom and, like, our dog that just had 10 puppies in this hotel. Like, and my aunt and her. Anyways, it was nuts, man. It was like we were trying to be the savior for people, and we needed saved. It was crazy. But all that said, like, I just went from, like, this little bubble kid, you know, like, into, like, the real world. Just, like, trying to figure it out, you know, like, riding my bike, going to work at 16 hours, and then anyways, we ended up moving, finding a place that out at my mom's aunt's house, you know, like she wasn't living in. So we went and stayed there, and it was like in the middle of like this. I don't mean this any bad way, but like it was a not a good area. Like we were the only white people on the street. It was Mexican, prominently Mexican neighborhood, and they were nice. Everybody was nice. It wasn't bad. But it was a whole different culture, thrusted into like a totally different culture. Like I made friends with the neighbors, but they're always like roasting a goat over the fire and drinking beer in the backyard. At like 15, I'm working at the steel fabrication shop, like welding stairwells at 15 and drinking beer with the neighbors and going to the Mexican club with them. Like,
So you had a Mexican upbringing as well.
I was just like thrusted. I'm just going to blend in. I was like a chameleon. I'm just going to get in where I fit
That's
in.
what we call
I was accepted. I was
vario, I believe is what they call it.
So it was just like, it was just it was a total shift. And like, you know, and then I met a friend that I used to know in church, who's my best friend when I was like 8, and he's like smoking weed and doing all this stuff. So I'm like, remember the first check I got, you know, I got like $500 check at 15. And went and bought a big, like a quarter pound of weed. Like, what am I going to do with that? Like, it's just not to get into that, but it's just like crazy to think about. Like, that was like my first interaction with like the real world and first check. Like,
So right around 15 is when you started dabbling into the alcohol and then the marijuana.
yeah. I was right in that same range, started hanging out at the bowling alley. And my mom was just trying, she was working. My dad wasn't in the picture, you know. And my mom was just working, just trying to make ends meet. She couldn't pay attention. She couldn't even, you know, she hadn't worked in 23 years. You know, she'd been a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling, and doing all that stuff. And now she's working every day and trying to deal with a rebellious, angry 15-year-old, like angry at the world, starting to, with my dad, just everything that happened. You know, my dad got found out with a bunch of cheating a bunch of times and, like, just totally ripped the family apart with choices that he made. It was a really tough time to deal with, just trying to figure it all out. But, you know,
At what age did your parents split?
Right
At
at
around
that
14.
point. I mean, they got an official divorce in that
Okay.
sometime in that period. So it was 14 to 16. Sometime in that period, the official divorce happened, but they were not together. You know, after we got evicted from the house, it was nothing really came back the same at that point. So
When you started the drinking and the marijuana and all that, I was same age, but around 15. Would you say it was curiosity, or were you trying to fill voids already at that point, or escape reality as such?
I think there might be a little bit of all of that included in there. So I was definitely seeking for acceptance still. So I was longing to be acceptance, which I think we all long to be accepted.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're intended, created to have acceptance, but we just search for it in the wrong places. But for me, it was that you know, an old friend that was actually my best friend from when I was 9 years old. You know, was the one that introduced me to marijuana, and so it was acceptance. It was you know, started with that, turned into escaping reality. You know, and then just sent me into just a real fast-paced thing with more people that I would meet within the next couple months, that I would meet that were older, and you know, the drinking and the partying and the sex and the, I mean, you know, it was like within a couple months, I think I'd already taken ecstasy and just introduced to this whole way of life that was, you know, I didn't really know that it was bad technically, because I was, like I said, I was in a shelter. I mean, of course, I have an inherent conscience that told me it was bad, but as far as, it's just the road I was going down, and there was nobody there to really say anything otherwise. So yeah, so that just started. Like I said, it just spiraled into a fast-paced thing where it went downhill pretty quick, with the partying, and just stay gone for a couple days at a time. And yeah, so that was see, where were we? It's like 18. I'm still like 16 at this point. So we moved again. We ended up moving from there, and we went and crashed my sister's place. She had like a little 1-bedroom cottage thing on the other side of town. We needed somewhere to go, so we went and crashed her place. And again, it was just another step of putting me into the inner city of Orlando, Florida. And of course, I got introduced to cocaine and the club scene. And so, I got into selling cocaine. I knew it was a way for me to get into the clubs that the older friends with all older people. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go down that route. So just got into the selling drugs thing. And, of course, I'm doing drugs and just going down that whole road. And so that transpired. I'm still going down that road. And about 18, my dad started coming back. He had got out of jail. He was in Germany, actually, for a while, in a jail fighting extradition, and came back. And so he started coming back in the scene, trying to get it, make a effort to get back in my life. And I didn't want anything to do with him for a while. And so that started a process. Of course, I didn't know this at the time, but my dad, had surrendered his life to Christ while he was, away. And so he had a radical transformation, at that point. And so he was trying to, do his redemption process of making his relationships right and things that he had burned bridges with. And so, of course, I was very resilient of it. And so for a couple of years. And at about 19, I remember he would call me and be like, hey, why don't you come out to church? Why don't you come out to church? He lived about an hour away from where I was. And I was still just heavy in addiction. And so then he started bribing me and be like, hey, listen, I'll give you like $75. I'll take you and bring a friend. He's like, bring a friend. I'll take y'all both out to lunch, and I'll give you some gas. I'll fill your tank up and give you like $50. And in my head, I'm like, all right, I can go get a bag of weed with it. That's where my mindset was. And so this went on for a couple months, or maybe I don't know the exact time, but it went on for a while. And I would drive out there and I would go to church. And at 19, I remember going to church, and I don't know everything the preacher said. He gave the message of salvation, and I was just so tore up and in torment and just so deprived of everything I ever wanted. I could feel right there in that service, like when he was doing that altar call, I could feel the love of Christ come over, and I could feel the conviction and the weight of my sin. And I just knew that I had to go to that altar and I had to get rid of it. And so that's what I did, man. I don't have an exact date like some people do. I hear it all the time. I'm like, Lord, I wish you'd give me that date. Like I want to know what that date was, but the date doesn't matter. I know I can see it. I remember experiencing the Father's love at that point, but the sad truth after that moment is that there was really nobody to disciple me, and I was in such a bad state. Why my salvation was secure, my ability to have victory or to overcome the demons that were on me was not going to happen without a lot of divine interventions over a long period of time in my story. And so not a lot externally changed. Looking back at it now, I can see where God was in all of it, but there was an internal change. What happened was that he came to live in me, in my spirit, and he made me righteousness of God through Christ Jesus in my spirit at that moment. But I still had all this flesh that was plagued with all kinds of, carnal things, the things that we desire, the selfishness and the discontent and all the emotional things that I did not understand at that point. And so at that moment, I usually call that the beginning of the end. And so from that moment was like I went from somewhat functional, just partying pretty crazy to like addicted to crack cocaine, like in another city, locked in a trap house, like living on a trap house of a porch within like 6 months. And then I was like down there for a few months, and it got pretty ugly. Was stealing stuff and doing like grab and runs. Like it was nuts. And so this was like 2000, I don't even know, early 2000s. And ended up calling my dad, getting a hold of my dad, and be like, hey, listen, I need you to like come get me. I can't leave. It's like there's something holding me here. I need you to come get me. Like, just come get me and take me to a rehab. And so that took a couple months. He would call me and ask me where I was. And I'd be like, I need you to come get me. And I wouldn't tell him where I was. It's like, looking back, like I was really out there, man. But, you know, I remember him and my Uncle Kenny came down and got me and drove my truck back and took me to a detox. And I got clean for a little bit. You know, went to a program and you know, was trying to get off of all the stuff I was on, and had some really good encounters with the Lord in that Christian program. And but you know, like 4 or 5 months in, I relapsed and restarted it, tried to go through it again, but none of it ever really stuck. I still had some deep-seated issues, and so that I remember I was going to community college, trying to get my GED, and I had met a girl, and I thought she was a good Christian girl. And of course, like a week later, we were, you know, anyways, we got 2 kids together at this point. So, anyways, I met her, and of course, that just the girl came in, and the sex came in. I left God again. All the stuff I'd been working for, I just went after my carnal desires, and lost track, left God at the door, and of course relapsed over a few months, and didn't quite go back to where I was, but was drinking again, was not doing right, and then within a few months I was worse off than I was before. And you know, just thinking about it, I know in Matthew 12 it talks about, you know, when an evil spirit is cast out of someone, it goes off into waterless places and searches for somewhere to dwell, and when it doesn't find any, it goes gets 7 more stronger than itself and comes back. And the state of that person, when it finds the house swept and empty, the state of that person is worse than where they started. And that's exactly what happened. You know, like I had my house swept while I was there, and then so they left, they got cast out, but then you know, I chose in my rebellion to pick up the same things that I was in, and when they came back, it wasn't filled with the Holy Spirit. It was empty and clean and just waiting for those other ones. And the state I found myself in was worse than where I was before. And, of course, I started, you know, breaking into cars and stealing stuff again, and, you know, to support a habit. And I was going to work during the day and then going out at night and stealing stuff. And it was just crazy. It was like a Jekyll and Hyde situation, like trying to – but it was just ended up getting in trouble for that. It was 2009, got arrested for 28 felony charges and a bunch of misdemeanors, a lot of misdemeanors. So 8 different cases. It was just a whole mess, a whole bunch of burglary charges, and was looking at a lot of time in prison. If they would have ran it concurrent, I think it was like 152 years. If they would have ran all of them concurrent, and started walking down that journey. Of course, I got put in jail and went through some detox stuff, and worked out some stuff to go to a program called Fresh Start Ministries in Florida, Orlando, Florida. And so I got released on community control, all this stuff to go to this program. Went to this program, and man, it was a journey, but that's really where I started to be able to be discipled at that point, like where I was able to sit under the Word and actually read the Word, you know, and understand it. But, you know, again, I was going through that, but I was still looking at pornography. I was still masturbating. I still had these little hidden things in my life, you know, like I was being transformed to the extent that I would allow Him to transform me, but I was still holding these things back, these selfish things back, and but in spite of that, man, you know, the crazy part was in spite of that, in spite of my rebellion, in spite of my selfishness, in spite of my deliberate attempt to just keep my little idols, my little pocket sin, my little pet stinkies on my shoulder, whatever you want to call them. I remember a time when I had a dream when I was there, and it was a dream of me and my kids. It was funny because I didn't have girls at the time, but the girls were in this dream, little girls, 3 of them, and I was on the mission field, and I was serving him and sharing the gospel on the mission field, and I was like, you know what, me and my whole family are going to be missionaries, like that was where my head was at that time, and but it's just funny, like that just got brought back to me. Like I remembered it, but then I was like, yeah, right, and it's like all this time goes by. And well, anyways, we'll get to that. But yeah, man. So anyways, I was going through this program. Like I said, I still had all these things that were hidden that were, still, not that I'm not getting down on anybody if you're smoking cigarettes or doing anything. It's just my convictions. I was still indulging in all the things that I used to. I was still doing it all besides the drugs, the pornography, still being, having sex with my not wife, still living in sin intentionally, knowing that it was wrong. And in spite of that, he was still giving me visions, knowing that I would be like here today at this moment. Knowing that I would make all those stupid choices, knowing that I was going to fail miserably, but he was with me through it all. So, anyways, I did end up get sentenced while I was at that program, and I got sentenced to. Anyways, I got sentenced to like a year in the county, and then a bunch of house arrest, 2 years house arrest, and 3 years probation, right? And so I had to leave there and go to jail for a year, and so I've completed the program, but I had like a day when I got out of that program, and sure enough, I went and got high. That's exactly what I did. I went back to I was like, that mentality. Oh, I'm going to jail anyway, so I might as well go out with a bang. Like that was my mentality. It wasn't my mentality, but for that moment. In distress, like I reverted back to what I knew, and that's what I knew, and so sent me back down the road with that. So I went out and partied and went and turned myself into jail and got through that year, and then got out and violated within a few months my community control. So that sent me back into court, and I ended up doing an open plea with the judge because I was looking at a lot more time after that, and by God's grace, got sentenced to 4 years in prison. I know that sounds crazy to say by God's grace, but I was looking at a lot more, and it was God's grace. It was Him taking me and doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, and that was just setting me out of all the chaos, just stripping everything away from me and saying, "Here, son, go sit down for a little bit. Let's just focus on me and you," and that's exactly what it turned into. Not at first, but there was about a year of depression and a lot of anxiety and a lot of turmoil and trying to control things that I couldn't control because I was behind bars in that time. But there was a time after I got in there where I remember going down and talking to this old guy. He'd been in prison. He has life in prison, right? He's been there like 28 years, and he'd sell coffee. And I just came in, and I was in the anyways, like the receiving part of the prison where they classify you and then send you off. And I remember going down there, and I had some stamped envelopes. I didn't have no money on the books, nothing. I'd trade it for a cup of coffee, because they're worth like 50 cents a piece. So you give them 2 of them, and you get a cup of coffee. That's like, that's your little pick-me-up to something, because you're just stripped of everything. They degrade you. They give you a number. They don't call you by your name anymore. I mean, it was traumatizing experience for me. I was like, I do not belong here. Like, I was not built for this, but man, it was nuts. I remember getting there. It was like 30 degrees outside. He stripped us butt naked and screaming at us outside. It was dark outside. It was nuts, man. I was not intended for it, and I don't plan on ever going back, man, unless it's for the gospel or something else. But yeah, man, I remember going down there, getting a cup of coffee from this guy, and I'd see a Bible on his bed, And I was still beaten down from walking through this program, going through intense inner healing classes. And I mean, this is like 14 months of this, inner healing classes and discipleship, like all these different phases of this group, and then getting out and like going and getting high. Like, what a failure. I was wrapped up in failure, and condemnation had me at that point. So I was in this depression. I didn't really know where to go. Like, my girlfriend had left me, everything. My house was getting lost. My business was sold. Like, everything fell apart, because of my choices, or so. That's the way I saw it. I remember going down there and being like, hey, like, I feel like God's telling me to do this prayer call in this cell, but I'm scared. And the guy was like, look around, man. Like, look around. Where are you? He's like, who's going to care? They're either going to come or they're not. Just do it. And I'm like, all right. All right. So that was like the start of like when I just kind of woke up and was ready to start getting back on track with serving him. And I had no clue what I was doing. I'm sure I theologically misquoted and out of context so many scriptures, but people would come and I'd get to tell them that, Jesus loves them, and I get to read a scripture and I get to pray with them. And so I did that through the whole stint of prison. And, I'd like to say this was like, after that I got out and I was on fire for the Lord, but, there was like 41 months is what I think I did on 4 years. And I got in tip-top shape, had a plan when I got out. Like, I was going to, go to school for personal fitness training, which I did. I was going to move to California. That's where my sister was. I had all these plans planned out, and when I got out, like, I hit the AA meetings. They put me on this thing and sent me to a bunch of AA meetings to go talk about my testimony and do all this stuff. And you know what? In the midst of that, like, looking back, I never sat down once and said, God, what do you want me to do when I get out? Like, I look back at wonder. I don't have to wonder. I can see it. Like, there was all these points throughout my time when I was in there and set apart, and I learned so much, and I was doing what God was putting on my heart to do in there. But there was a point I got to when I started seeing the end of that, and I chose to not include God in any of those decisions, and that gave Satan an inroad. So he already had me at that point. And once I had already conceded to not have God in those plans, then all the other things of the flesh started creeping in with the pornography and the desires for sex stuff. And with that came, well, where do I know how to get laid at? And so, pardon my French, but that was what was going through my head when I got out, of course, the bar. Yeah. That's where my mind went to.
So laid is French?
Yes. Yes.
I didn't know that. You learn something new every day.
Yeah, that's good.
Laid.
it's actually those no.
That's Hawaiian.
Yeah.
Laid. Anyway, I'm sorry.
But the bars, and so then that's where I was going. But anyways, yeah. I mean, looking back, it was like I just left God at a certain point. None of the plans that I had when I got out, God was not sought in any of them. Looking back, and it's like there's this. I think it's Hebrews 3. It talks about, it's talking about the Israelites, and it's, I think it says, today when you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts as the Israelites did in the rebellion. And it's talking about the core rebellion. It says it's 3 times throughout Hebrews 3. And you know what? There's a point where I was hearing the voice of the Lord, and then there was also a point where I made or didn't make choices, whichever way it was. I can't really tell you, but where my heart was hardened because of certain things I was still engaging in. And, looking at it, it was still like that occasional pornography magazine that I would look at. It was still that occasional rip, because you weren't allowed to smoke there, so they'd smuggle in cigarettes, and you'd have like a little rolled up cigarette. You'd pay like $2 for like this little pen cigarette. Tobacco, like so stupid to think about, but I'd be jonesing every once in a while, like when I was having a bad day. I just want to conform to what I knew. I kept reverting back to what was natural instead of what I knew to be right. And in that, I hardened my heart. I still wanted the things that I wanted. It was still all about me. And so I got out and I did everything I had planned to do. And you know what? It led me out to California, and within about, 14 months, I was doing methamphetamine, like about the only drug that I hadn't done yet. And so that sent me, I did it a couple times, but anyways, that sent me down a crazy road, man. And that was the roughest by far, and did the most damage, was going down that. And so I was out in California I got out of prison March 4th of 2014, and I was out there till, I think I got back into Florida, and anyway, I was out there a little over 3 years, or right at 3 years. And so there's just a lot that happened there. But in the time that I was out there, I remember when I first went out there, I got into this network marketing company called Asante Organics. I don't know if I can say names on here, but
Well, you've done the damage. We're live.
yeah, we're live. And anyways, got involved in this company that my mom was involved in. So I was like on her underline, and one day I remember I got this little message from this girl named Whitney, and she was like, "Hey, you're cute or handsome." I forget what it was, handsome or cute. So she had been like Facebook stalking me, I guess. She liked my picture, but she was on my mom's downline, and she lived in New Orleans at that time. So we started talking. That turned into Skyping, and spending copious amounts of time on video calls, and we did that for a few months, and we had conceded she was going to drive out there and see me, and like she got to like Texas, and I called her and was like, "Hey, I don't think it's a good idea for us to meet. Like, if we meet, we're going to get married, and I'm just not there." Like, and so I just, like, total selfish jerk move. Like, she literally parked her car up, was driving to, like, Texas, like, halfway there probably almost. Like, on the other side of Texas, it was, like, canceled on her. It was, like, the worst move ever, like. But anyways, that's what happened. And so we talked a little bit every once in a while, but that kind of broke off. And we talked, and then we wouldn't talk for months, and we'd talk again and see how each other was doing. Well, she didn't know that I'd got, hooked on methamphetamine. She didn't know all that stuff after the fact. We'd talk every once in a while, and I'd be all whacked out thinking, the FBI had set up surveillance in my yard for like $100 of methamphetamine. Like, they was like, spend $8 million to survey me. Why for like $100 bag of dope? And just like peeking out the windows and crazy. But anyways, it was nuts. But I remember calling her. Well, let me back up a minute before I get there. There was a point in 2016. My mom came out to visit, and I went and stayed with my sister while she was there. And I was trying to detox. I was trying to get off of it. And so I was like pretty much just eating and sleeping, and highly aggravated everywhere in between. That's kind of what the detox is, and going through some immense torment mentally. But my mom said, and I didn't know this till after, but there was a time when I just woke up and I was just so aggravated, and I was on a mission. And I made a big old scene, got in my car, and took off. And went and got high. And that sent a spiral of paranoia to get set in. And then, like, this whole thing where I was like, that's it. I'm getting out of California. I'm going home. Like, I can't, like, literally, like, talking into the wind, like the FBI was coming after me. Like, it was nuts. Like, I was out there. Really, really out there. And what's crazy is, like, I talked to my mom, and she was just actually telling me this not too long ago, that she was literally that night. She said it broke, and she got mad at God. She said she was in the bathroom, and she was screaming at him. She was like, "I didn't even ask for him. You gave him to me," because I was like the surprise kid, She was like, "It's time for you to do something. I'm done." He was, I don't know exactly how it was, but she got mad at him. And that next day, that set in. That paranoia set in, and I woke up in a tizzy. But you know what, that thing, like, I went and used, but that was the catalyst that sent me back to Florida. It got me back home. And I remember driving back, and that was a crazy journey, man. Just the whole thing. But my mom prayed me out of California. She literally came there, was praying, and I woke up not even realizing it, but with that intention of like not really knowing where I was going, but I was just upset, aggravated, and before I know it, like 2 weeks later, I'm back in Florida, and that was a product of my mom praying it down and just putting a demand almost on God. I know that sounds almost, some people might think that's, I don't know what that would be called, heresy or whatever. I don't know, sacrilegious, something. Who could put a demand on God? But it wasn't so much a demand as it was of reminding God of some of the covenants and some of the things that he had entered into. But it was just really powerful to hear my mom say that. But there was a long journey also on the way back to Florida. Still in California, I remember contacting Whitney and being like, "Hey, I'm coming through, Mississippi, and maybe we should finally meet." And so we started talking a little bit, and I'm still a little, I'm just coming off things, still a little scatterbrained, trying to make sense of stuff. And so we made a plan, and we took like a week and a half to get there, but finally got there, and we finally met. And of course, we got a 6-year-old daughter named Lily that we have to show for that meeting. And we hung out for a few weeks. I took her down to Florida and then drove her back. And you know what? Like, again, I wish I could say this was the end of my stupidity, but it wasn't. When I brought her back, we talked for a few weeks, and she told me she was pregnant, and I was like, "Oh, well, I want a DNA test." Like, that was a good idea, right? And it was not a good idea, and she had every reason to hate me after that. And so we didn't talk again for a while, and of course, in my mess, I ended up getting another girl pregnant in Florida, and so I have 2 beautiful 6-year-olds out of this crazy mess that I'm sharing with y'all right now. But at the time, I could have never seen the way life would be right now. But yeah, that's what happened, man. And so I ended up not talking to Whitney or even meeting Lily for all that time, and was just kind of trying to go through. I never did get back. I can't say never. I didn't get hooked back on street drugs for a while. I went the medication route and went to a doctor and got them legally, which probably just as worse. Not probably, it was worse because I got prescribed a lot of stuff and it was not good. Yeah, that's man. It's a lot, man. It is a lot going through this. I know there's just so much. I'm like, wow, there's still a lot to go. But there's a lot of mess here, man. And it's just it's so messy, a little nerve-wracking putting it out here, to be honest. And but
Well,
yeah.
The one thing I love so far about your story, and I'm interrupting and asking more, but I'm just sitting here letting, kind of in amazement, honestly. But the one thing that I hope everybody has seen, and I've been sitting here thinking a lot about, is, that moment you were in that church when you did have salvation and you did accept Christ. The sanctification process is different for everybody.
Yeah.
Not all of us lived that moment where it was, I put my hands to the air, received salvation, and from that day forward, I was this great Christian person.
Yeah.
A lot of what you've been saying resonates highly with me right now, because I'm in that sanctification process where I'm battling every day against some of the exact things you've talked about.
Yeah.
Because they have not fully, you start chipping away at the big things, but it's a lot of these little things that still linger, and that'll knock you off and knock you down for a few days. And yours is a elevated story of just, continuing to struggle, but that is the walk that some people go down. And there is an end to it, though.
There is.
I think it's important to point out too what we were talking about earlier, of how you don't have to get yourself all wired tight and everything all perfect before you can consider yourself Christian, right? Like just how you walk through those things. I heard somebody put it so eloquently as that you wouldn't clean up before you took a shower, right? So
Correct.
you don't have to get better before you meet Christ, right? This is, like you said, the sanctification process is something that isn't just like a magic wand that's waved. Like, this is a transformation that takes time. So I think it's very crucial that you pointed that out in your story, that, you know, how it was all a process. You know, it wasn't something that, you know, a lot of people look at as like the cure all, you know, oh, I'm Christian now, everything's wiped clean. I'm reminded of the, oh brother, where art thou, where he goes down into the water and he comes out and he's like, I have been saved. I've been free from my transgressions. He's like, well, the state of Mississippi might look at it the other way, but
well, and that's why, like, for me lately, I really hold on to every day, just about telling myself, you know, the things that I do are not what I want to do. It's the things that I want to do that I cannot do. I think it's in Romans and all, because I struggle with that, kind of like something you said earlier, where it's like you struggle with stuff and you know that this is not what I want to do, but your flesh and the sin in you has such a hold that you continue to do it. And you're knowing that. And I used to get really discouraged, and this is something I've had to walk through the past months, is I was really bad about any time I would stumble. That would be like it, because I'm very judgmental of myself, very hard on myself. So I would, you know, if I stumbled, then it was, well, I'm not worthy of praying to God. I'm not even worthy of asking forgiveness. So I would just go downhill for weeks or months.
Right.
Whereas now I've started taking that approach of, okay, I screwed up. Tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah.
I can ask forgiveness again. And it's sanctification is a different road for everybody.
Yes.
And
Yes, it
and
is.
you can't compare your walk with somebody else's, because it's different for everybody, and God has different purposes for everybody's walk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he sure does. Yeah, I mean, that's, you go down that condemnation road, and that was what wreaked havoc on my life so bad, is that I couldn't get over that guilt and shame of when I would fall. And that even goes back to the beginning, where my ability to receive love was warped. And not only by what I saw my dad treating my mom with, or my dad, how he treated us, or how he dealt with things, but you know, how I perceived love to be received. It warped my perception of how God loved me, and so grasping the concept that he didn't only die, he didn't only come and live his perfect life and die a sacrificial death and get raised again on the third day for me to be eternally in heaven, but so that I could have a piece of that now. Like, that revelation was not there. It was never taught to me. I didn't grasp it. Grace was the thing that empowered me to overcome those sins. Like, I saw it as you know, kind of like, hey, I got saved. I'm waiting on heaven. I just got to hold on. I didn't understand that he is the name that is exalted above every name. Like, the thought of that, like depression, anxiety, fear, addiction, if it has a name, cancer, death, like, if it has a name, his name is exalted above every name. Like, to think about that, I didn't come until way later. Like, and I started, well, we'll get into some of that, but like, that radically changed my life. To me struggling with sin, to, yeah, they might still be there, but my focus isn't on sin anymore. My focus is on, like, what he gave me back when I was 19 in my spirit. That it was there, I just didn't know it. I thought I was struggling to obtain this victory. I thought I was struggling to get a hold of it, when the whole time it was inside of me. I just didn't know it. Like, and if I would just focus off what did he give me inside of me, based off of what the word says, instead of what I thought it to be, then I do believe, looking back at it, my narrative would have been very different. Like, you know, in the midst of all this stuff, like, I took a hard road because I hardened my heart each time. Like, I would hear the voice of the Lord. I would know enough truth to get by it, and I would harden my heart. And I wouldn't lean on some of even the little tools he'd put in my life. Maybe it was a person, you know, maybe it was multiple people or multiple things that I could have used in the midst of that. Like, I can go back and see where God was, like where his, you know, it says he'll always give you a way out, you know, in temptation. Like, I could see where God was in the midst. I remember when I was in that program, one of the guys, Sammy, Pastor Sammy, was like this little short Italian guy. He's fiery. He was in like our inner healing class, and we were in there, and I remember I got into a conflict dealing with like because we had to go through this inner healing stuff, and all these things are getting dug up, and all this like aggravations going on, and I was like having a hard time, and I went, and they set me in like the principal's office, but it wasn't the principal's office. It was just like the founder of the program. It was like, he gave me this homework assignment to go find where God was in all the mess. And like, it was months and months and months. And at the end, I brought him. I was like, I don't know. God's not in the mess. Like, there's no God in that. Like I could not grasp that there was a God like there trying to gently nudge me. Like, if I would be willing to accept his guidance, like take me a different direction, that my narrative could have been different. Like I was too wrapped up in myself. Like thinking about me all wrapped up in myself does not make a very big package. You know what I mean? Like it was just that whole concept. Like I was so bottled up in myself and my self-esteem, me, that I couldn't see where God was in any of it at that point. More recently, over the last couple of years, like I can really see where God was in all of it. Sorry, I just went off on that. But, yeah, man, it's just been a great journey. And there's a lot. We're just kind of getting into where some of these crucial parts come into play of really me coming to the end of myself. All this other stuff was a part of it, and it all plays a role. And I pray that God can use all of it to touch somebody, just to let them know that there's still hope, because it's just a bunch of, anyways, I was a piece, man. I was really a piece.
So how did you end up to where you are today from your debacle with your ex? And
well, like I said, I was in a relationship with another girl in Florida, and so we started that, and of course, I got on some legal prescriptions and went down that road. Tried to stay clean for a few months when she was pregnant, and I did. I got off Adderall for a while. So Adderall and Xanax were like in every part of my day thing. Got off Adderall for a while, and then while she was pregnant for like 6 months, cleaned up, was doing good, working, doing all this stuff. And then, eventually that just crept back in, because I still had this empty void inside. I still wasn't being filled by the Holy Spirit. I wasn't seeking those things. Like, I tried the best I could. I'd listen to like the Christian station, because it was the only thing that could soothe the voices, the things that were going on in my head, that were telling me to, anyways, all that stuff. And so we tried to do that route, and I think she was, I don't know, maybe 3 years in, and some things started happening. We'd moved into a house. It looked like we were doing all right, but I don't remember what happened, man. Something happened. We're trying to have a garage sale. We had this big blowout fight, got kicked out, and it was just like some very, very harsh things were said that sent me into a place. Like, this wasn't just like a fight. Like, there was some very intentional, malicious things that were spoken to me that triggered something in me that totally sent me into a spiral. Like the end of the world was happening. Like backing up, I know I didn't talk about it much, but I have 2 sons that I haven't been able to be a part of their life back from when I went to prison. And their mom has not been, she hasn't wanted to allow them to be in my life. And so it's been a struggle there. I've tried multiple times, still am trying, and still am currently trying. And so that's just another piece of the puzzle that God is restoring, but it's just haven't seen it manifest yet. But all that said, there's a lot of guilt and shame that was associated with that broken relationship, not being able to be the father, making all those mistakes, not knowing. So at this point, like having another daughter, in my mind, when everything fell apart and I left, like I couldn't handle another child being raised without a father. Like, that idea in my head coming from the brokenness that I came from broke me. Like, I went into, of course, I reverted back. I went and found some drugs, got high, and that sent me on I don't even know. I ended up with just a few days. Like, I just decided I was going to disappear. In my head, I had a mental breakdown, and in my head, I wasn't going to make it out of it. Like, I was going to die. Like, I was never going to see anybody again. So I turned off all the cell phones, turned off everything, and I disappeared. Ended up living in the woods at, like, this homeless camp for 10, 11 months. Like, I was on an FBI missing persons list. Like, they thought I was dead. Like, they brought in investigators to investigate my girlfriend, like, because my parents thought she killed me and, like, disposed of the body. Like, it was just, like, I just disappeared. I had totally lost touch with reality. And it was just like there's a lot of this I don't remember big parts of this time. Like, it was just total, like, months and months that I don't have any recollection of. And so I just totally went off the deep end. And anyways, ended up getting pulled over by a cop months later, and was like, "You're on a missing persons, thing, and you got a lot of people looking for you." And he's like, he didn't take me in. He just had to call and notify some people, and they told him just not take me in. But anyways, in that, some family got wind of it. Of course, my dad again came searching for me and found me, and that was kind of just another grip of reality. It was like, hey, there's still people that, like, love me. Like, I left a house and all this. I just left everything. Like, I just disappeared. Like, I was intent that I was gonna die. Like, I just wanted to die. That was where I was, and I was just at that hopeless state. And so, when my dad came, I remember that shone a little glimmer of hope of, like, maybe, but I still didn't know how to exactly get to wherever I was going to end up. And so that was just the start of, like, a 1.5-year process of me coming back to society, number one. This was like 2019. This wasn't like a long time ago. So it's just to kind of give y'all an idea of how radically Christ has came into my life here. But so that was the one of the worst times. We get into 2020 and 2021. I was back, trying to do what I could, but back on prescription medication, pretty heavy, on oxycodone, on Xanax, on Adderall, all at the same time, and way overprescribed, and just trying to figure that out. Using street drugs every once in a while, but multiple attempts. 2021. We'll get to the blunt of this, or the peak of this. I was, again, just a hopeless mess. Like, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get clean. I couldn't stay clean. I couldn't do anything. I tried to go to church. I was trying to listen to sermons. I remember just, like, trying to do anything I could, but I just couldn't get off anything. I would have my medications for, like, 3 weeks. I'd run out, and I'd be in a coma for a week, sick. It was like this vicious cycle every month. Like, I was literally at a point, like, thinking, like, there's no way I can even work. I can't function. Like, I couldn't go out into the world. Like, going to the store was just the anxiety. I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I couldn't even talk to people. I couldn't look them in the eyes. I couldn't, and that wasn't just because I was high. It was the anxiety thing. Me taking all that medication and everything. I'd just been so succumbed by chemicals for so long that it was like my brain was failing me. Like, everything was failing me. I tried to commit suicide. I ended up in hospital. 2021, I was in the hospital 7 times from overdoses.
Wow.
7 times. And 3 of those was intentional overdoses. Like, where I was like, I'm going to go get a bag of, whatever that stuff is they're selling everybody now. Killing everybody. Fentanyl, and I'm going to just do myself in. And I tried that, and I'm pretty sure I died because, there's some things that usually, but I didn't die because I'm here. There's nothing in the natural that says I should be alive right now.
You need to get with that fentanyl dealer and tell him you want your money back.
But that's where my mind was, man. And I was just in so much turmoil and so much pain. I didn't know in my mind that same rational thought of, like, hey, I got saved to just bear it out and wait for heaven. So, like, why would I want to stay here when I was in so much pain? That's the perspective I had. And that perspective almost killed me. Because that's not the reality of what Christ came to do. Yes, he came to give us eternal life, but he also came to give us the power to overcome all those things. So all that torment, all those voices, all those dark moments, feeling alone. Like, I read this the other day. It was like, he's the defender of widows and he gives families to the lonely or something like that. And I was like, yeah, he does. Like, I got a pretty awesome family. Like, it's pretty amazing. But at that point, man, that's where I was. And so in my head, I just wanted the pain to end. Like, I wanted the pain to stop. I wanted it to go away. I needed a rest. And death was where it was. And I believed that I was going to heaven. It says confess with your mouth and believe in your heart, and you'll be saved. So that was a process also of coming to that. It was like, I remember going through a process after all this happened of being like, how could I be saved and do all this stuff? Like, how? Like, like questioning my salvation. It wasn't like so much of like a fear thing. It was really just I needed a conclusion. I was like, God, if you're going to have me share stuff with people and tell my testimony, like, I need to be sure of what I'm talking about. Like, I need to know without a doubt that I was saved then. Because if not, it would be much easier to tell them I was saved on December 5th of 2021. Like, that would be a much easier story. Hey, I got saved then. It was radical. But that's not the easy thing. I remember this guy used to say, the right thing is a hard thing and the hard thing is the right thing. And I'm like, well, it makes sense, but it does. Like, and it's true a lot of the time with what God's calling us to do. So walking through that journey, man, it was just like, I believed in my heart and I confessed with my mouth at 19 years old that Jesus Christ was my Lord and he was my Savior. And so, like, I was saved. No matter how I feel about it, no matter what it looks like, that's what I'm going to stand on because that's what the Word says. And so that's what I was standing on. But I had a lot of perceptions, or we'll call them, they're belief systems. I believed certain things that weren't true. I believed that he saved me just to go to heaven. And we weren't even created for heaven. Like, we were created to be on the earth when heaven and earth were one. Like, the new heaven and the new earth. Like, we're going to still be here, when it's all said and done. Anyways, all that to say, I forgot where I was, man. We were... back on the story of
2021 era.
2021, hopelessness. Man, that was where I was, and I remember I just got my prescriptions filled. I'd been up for like 3 days. I'll back up. It was Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving Day, I had lunch at my dad's house, and I left. And that night, I overdosed and woke up in the hospital. And I remember my dad impounded my truck. Called my dad to come get me to the hospital. He got me out. I went and got my truck out. And funny story. This is just total side note, but I got to share it. It was so weird. My truck, I got a black Ford F-150, and it's like got bed liner on it. And my rims were painted black, and I don't remember exactly how, but I went and got my truck out of the impound, and one rim was painted bright red. And I'm like... I have no idea what. My dad's looking at me like, son, what in the hell is wrong with you? But I don't know. I just had to share that. It jumped in my head. But anyways, all that said, man, that was the beginning.
Drugs
I remember
make you do weird
I know,
things.
right? And it's like that old commercial. This is your brain. And I cracked the egg and put it in the fire pan. This is your brain on drugs. Y'all remember that?
Yep.
But yeah, anyway, I got my truck out and I went to my storage unit and I just had a bunch of construction stuff in my storage unit, tools and, all the stuff, welders and stuff. And I lost my keys and I remember I had everything pulled out. Like, people couldn't even drive in the little area to get past where my storage unit, because I had stuff everywhere, like everywhere. And I couldn't figure out, I was just so spun. I couldn't figure out how to get all that stuff back in. And I called my dad to try to come up and help me find my keys. And he came up and was like, just so disgusted with what he was seeing. Like, he's like, I'm not helping you at all. Like, figure it out. Like, and just left. And I was like, all right. He came and checked on me a couple of times, but I was just I couldn't figure it out. Right. And, it's just, that's how just warped my brain was. And the best I could get to is I remember sitting on my tailgate and looking at all this stuff and was like, you know what, if I can just get back to Fresh Start, that program I went to 2010, this program I went through in 2010, then maybe I can just get back to that point and start somewhere. Just so that thought of sobriety came in my head. And I had a pocket full. I just got my scripts filled. Like, And I was like, well, I'm going to call Amy and see if she'll come take me to a detox. And so I did. And she came and I'm sitting on that tailgate and she's putting all this stuff away for me. And I remember just sitting there going, here's just like my life right here. It's just scattered. And somebody else is sitting here picking up my stuff again. And it was just like, I don't know how to really put it. My eyes were opened at that point just to see like a lot of the fog that I'd been in, everything that was just like, it was just, life didn't instantly change. Nothing like, not that I could think clearly. I was still on drugs. I was still detoxing, but there was that glimpse of something. And that glimpse was hope, but I just hadn't really put all them pieces together yet. So she drove me down, dropped me off at a detox. I sat outside that detox for 20-something hours, and because I didn't have a bed until they opened up. And I went in, and I stayed 2 weeks, and I probably should have stayed longer, and then went to my mom's house. Got out on a Saturday, and I couldn't check into that program until Monday, so I went to my mom's house and was sitting on her bed, and she introduced me to she put this internet ministry on, and or podcast, whatever you want to call it. It's an internet ministry, and his name's Joseph Z. And I don't remember everything. I've tried to go back and find the exact one that I was watching, but it was just, I know it was on December 5th, but I think it was a past recording. But I started hearing what I was sharing, that his name is exalted above every name, and that I heard a message about the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And that's December 5th. I received the message that he was sharing, and I received the baptism of the Holy Spirit then. And there's a thing in 2 Kings 6 where I think it's Elijah, I think, and his servant are being surrounded by some enemies, and he prays to the Lord and says, open his eyes so he can see that there are more with him than there are against him. And his eyes are opened, and he looks up and he sees chariots of flames and fire all the way around him. And that is, it's an accurate depiction of the difference from that point on. I still had physical things to go through, chemical imbalances, all these struggles to walk through, but the compulsion, the desire to run back to everything I always knew was gone. Like it was a moment when I literally came to the end of myself, and I was just so done. But in spite of that, like I could see hope. Like I could see that there was light at the end of the tunnel. Like I could see that there was something beyond that pain that I had been going through. And so since then, there's been, I started going to work. I didn't stay at that program that year like I should. I ended up getting kicked out for bringing my truck there without permission, and, being rebellious again. So, like, obviously there wasn't totally perfect, but tried to figure a couple things out. Went and stayed with my ex, with my kid's mom, for like a couple days, trying to figure stuff out when I got kicked out. And then went and stayed with my dad, got a job doing construction, and just started walking down that path. But I was backfilling every day with sermons and just the word. Like the word was being preached to me in my ear continually. And then, I remember there was one night when I was just sitting there and I was like, I have a daughter out there that I've never even met. Like, just kind of thinking about this restoration process. I was going to NA meetings and going to AA meetings, going to everywhere I could get my hands on with people that were doing the right thing. Like, I was made up. I'm not going back. Mm-hmm. And I was just determined. Like, I was never going to go back to that again. And so anyways, I remember reaching out. It's about like 3 hours sitting there trying to figure out what do I even say to her, once I found her. And so anyway, I ended up typing a bunch of stuff out and then deleting it, typing stuff out and deleting it. Like, what do I say to the girl that, like, last time I talked to her was like, hey, I think I need a DNA test. Like, all right, you jerk. Like, she had every reason to hate me, every reason to not talk to me, I don't know, but just that whole thing. So I ended up sending her a little wave emoji. Like, I was like, what else I do? Like, I did all that just to settle on an emoji. It was horrible. But you know, that little emoji, she responded pretty quickly, and before I know it, we were talking on a FaceTime, and I was meeting my daughter. Of course, she didn't know that I was her dad at the time.
Yeah.
And of course, I went and got my other daughter and let them talk. Still didn't know that they were sisters. And so that was the birth child of that relationship being formed. That girl Whitney that I had met is now my wife. My beautiful, beautiful, awesome wife, which I'm very proud of, and very proud of the relationship that God's formed. And we started talking, and I remember I called my mom to tell her I'd reached out to her, and she was like, "Oh, I knew this was going to happen." She was like, 2 years ago in the shower, God told me, yeah, we're going to get married. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? She's like, yeah, God talks to me in the shower all the time. I was like, all right. Well, I'm glad I'm in the loop now. So it's like she spoke those words, but you know what? My mom's been pretty awesome with her spiritual leadership in my life, and very an awesome role model in Christ's love and grace and mercy, and always been there in spite of stuff. And I put her through a lot. But when she said that, you know, like you just know if you're, maybe some people don't, but for me, like I know when the Spirit is leading me in something, and I know when there's a word in that. And it wasn't yes, I was happy to hear that. I was a little freaked out. I'd never been married. Like I wasn't planning at this point. Like I was thinking, hey, listen, I got a bunch of kids already. Like, I don't need any more kids. Let me just try to fix the relationships with those kids. Like I don't need to be married. I got girls in my life already. Like, so like my mind was made up. I'm just going to serve the Lord and try to take care of the kids that I already got. Like, and then this whole thing happened, and me and her talking, and it's like, before you knew it, we're already just right, almost, I don't want to say right back to where we were, because where we were was probably a little more provocative than where we are now. Mm-hmm. And both of us were in different spaces. So both of us, Christ was at the forefront of where we wanted to go. And so those conversations happened, and we were trying to plan a little get together, like for me to either come up here, for her to come down there, so Lily and LeVay could meet, which are my two daughters. So when we started planning that, of course, it turned into like this job that I had. I mean, just everything that was there for means just fell apart. And not in a bad way. Like, I knew it was God. Like, I was like, all right, so I'm supposed to be going up here for a visit, and all of a sudden, like, this job falls apart. This other thing that I was going to start doing, this business venture I was going to go into, like, everything just shut, and I'm like, all right, Lord, so are you shutting these doors? Like, and then we started the marriage thing comes. I told her something about what I believe, and it had a little bit to do with what my mom said, but I was trusting it might have been my mom that spoke it, but it was something that the Lord was doing. And so me and her started talking, and before you know it, we had came to the conclusion, like, listen, I know this sounds crazy, but if we put Christ first, like, we can't go wrong. Like, that's where we ended. And I was like, this sounds totally nuts, but I agree with you. Like, let's just go for it. And so we made a plan. It was all just within, like, less than a month. And I remember I got done with a bathroom remodel at like 3 o'clock on a Thursday night and drove up here on March 4th, right? And I remember driving up here to get married that same day. Like, I left and we were getting married at Winter Circles Park in Flowood. We had a minister lined up. We had everything already set up, and I drove in. We met for the first time in how many years, 6 years, 5 years at the courthouse, and got our marriage license. And got married at Winter Circles Park with me, my daughter Lily, and her mom, and these two lovely couples. It was kind of funny; they had the same last name as me, but they were just the people that officiated the wedding. And yeah, man, it was just like, it was crazy. I remember driving up here, and I passed Swanee River. That's where I was in prison at. I was up in the Panhandle. Same day I got out 8 years before, I was driving up here to start this new thing. I remember driving by there and being like, Lord, you are good. Like, I was a little delirious. I'd been up all night and going through all this stuff, but man, it was just like, it was surreal to think about. On that same day, like, I was released from prison, I was driving by it to go start my new life.
Wow.
That God, which was just a whole whirlwind for me to be caught up and brought here anyways. Little did I know I was going to be in some of the positions I'm in now. So I came up here, already had a job set with this company, a new startup, gutter companies, construction stuff, and just processing that whole journey of, like, what God had for me. Like, I still had that feeling like I was called to ministry. How I would get there, I had no idea. At this point, I'm just focused on him, and so I start that job. We get up here, and it was not easy. I'm just going to be honest. Like the adjustment of bringing a family together, bringing two people together that really don't know each other that well, because we talked years ago. People change, we're continually changing, and so there was like a lot of struggle, a lot of struggle, a lot of fights, a lot of, and I wasn't, neither one of us were perfect. We just knew we loved the Lord and that we're going to put him first. And whatever happens, we can make it through it with him. And there was a point where I didn't know if we were going to make it. And so, things happen. We started seeking counsel, and we reached out. We sought counsel, and that saved our marriage. Godly counsel, not just any counsel. But, there was a point I remember getting off work, and I was tired. Number one, I was working sun up to sundown, and I knew God wanted more. Like I desired more time with him, more time around people that could help me grow in him. I remember getting off and getting my journal out. It was like 5 o'clock. It was November 18th of 22. And I know that because I just went and found the journal recently. And I just got in there, and there was a call where I believe he was calling me to go to a Bible college, Charis Bible College in Colorado. And I was just discerning, like, me and my wife had been talking about moving out there, and just wasn't sure because we had, Crossgates Baptist and Brandon that we were attending, and I was like, I don't feel like this is our home at that point. Like, I wasn't sure. Like, maybe we should go try some other churches. Like, I was at that point of, like, hey, pulling my family out of this place. And knowing that I was called to go to this school, that's all I could see. But anyway, I got off and I journaled and I said, Lord, listen, well, first off, I thanked him for being that I was his son. I thanked him that he had redeemed me, that he had saved me and rescued me and delivered me for a plan and a purpose. Like, I was just going through reaffirming what I know that he says that I am. And then I said, Lord, I need you to make this clear. Like, I desire to be around other believers that believe the same thing I do, that I can learn and grow from. Like, I desire to have the time to invest in those things because I was just so wrapped up in trying to get money, trying to get a paycheck, trying to get the things I thought were providing for my family, that I was missing so much. And not even 3 weeks. Listen, I got through that, and I asked him not only to provide a means to go to the college, but to make it clear for me and my family the direction he was wanting us to go. And 3 weeks later, I was in a Bible study at our church, and one of our pastors there got up at the end and was like, hey, so we're really in need of help here, and we're hiring a couple of positions. So if anybody's interested, like, come check it out. I didn't even know what the position was. Like, my spirit jumped, and before he was even done talking, I was up there talking to him. And we talked. Anyways, things happened. I ended up interviewing with another guy just a few days later, and just God put all these pieces together. And of course, there was a big difference in what I thought God was calling me to go and do, and what he was orchestrating for me to be involved in. It looked different. It looked very different than what I had seen it, but I knew it was the right choice. So I went and interviewed, and of course the pay was quite a bit different. We were already struggling, and I got home. I remember calling my wife and be like, hey, well, there's like a huge difference in pay. I don't know how we would make it. And I said, but you know what, if you got a piece about it, just telling her that. I got home, walked in the door, and she's like, listen, I've already got a piece about it. I believe God's calling us to go to Crossgates. So I messaged the guy that I'm underneath and said, hey, listen, whether we can get any more money or not, like, I'm committed to the position. Like, this is where God's calling us to be, and we're just committed to it. And so that started the journey off. So now I'm on staff at a church. I'm it's busy, it's hectic, but I couldn't even see really what God was orchestrating then. Like, I didn't understand. He told me to not do my handyman business anymore, to go sit at this place making like $20,000 a year less than what I was making, and I was like, all right, God, like what is all this? Like, this doesn't make sense. I remember going to work every day and being like, Cherry, I don't understand. People are calling me like I could go make this money, and God told me not to do it anymore. What, like it doesn't make any sense. I just don't get what God's doing. I didn't understand it. Like, I couldn't understand it at the time, man. But God was producing something in me. I'd always toiled in what I could do, like in my own strength. Like, I was always confident in my skills as far as a craftsman in carpentry. I knew I could always go out and make $300 or $400. I could always go work an extra weekend and make $1,000 or whatever it was, and provide that. But God was trying to change something in me that was much more valuable than that paycheck. And it was like me being fully reliant on Him. And in the midst of all that stuff that I didn't understand, like walking through that, tithing when like we didn't have money to tithe. Like, we're already $1,200 in the red. Like, how are we going to pay this? But still tithing or paying a little bit over or sewing something in because He was telling us to do it. Dude, every month, like, I can't tell you how many times, like, this is just an encouragement. This isn't nothing that, like, we're just being obedient to what He was telling us to do. Like, the bills would be paid and we would still have a little bit left over, or like we would need something and like somebody would hand us an envelope with $300 or $400 in it, or like it was just like it was overwhelming that I wasn't toiling in what I could do, but I was resting in what He could do, and yet everything was still getting paid, and there was still a little bit left over. Like, not a lot, like we're still struggling, but like there was still a little bit left over, and it was like God was just saying, like, my grace is sufficient. I'm going to get you through it. Like, I'm going to provide for you. Just trust me and do what I'm telling you to do. And I'm going to equip you with everything you need to get there. Like, it might not look exactly how you think it's going to look, but if you can just let that go, get out of your intellect and just trust me, like, I'm going to get you through it. And it's going to be way better than what you had planned. And like, listen, today, like I've been there almost a year and a half. Like, the struggles between me and my wife, there's still that. We're married. It's hard to live with people sometimes. But listen, we have grace with each other. We pray with each other. We're able to steward our kids in the way of the Lord. Like, we're bringing up godly heritage. Like, that is the most awesome thing. Like, to see my kid when we're not feeling good, like come up and lay hands on my wife and pray for her, or like praying for my dad for healing, and then when he gets out of the hospital, like praying and thanking him, just those little things. Like, I'm not good enough to do that. That's the Lord just doing stuff. I'm just showing up, and just trusting that He's going to give me the tools I need to do it. But, you know what? I'm about to go on a mission trip to another country, like to share God's love with people. Like, just the multitude of things. We're launching a new 12-step recovery discipleship program at the church that me and somebody else are heading up. Like, to think that God has put me in these things that are way over my head, but I don't know how to do any of this stuff, but he's bringing me to Him because He knows I'm going to rely on Him. Like, I just get up and do that every day, but that's what He was producing in me in that time of setting me apart, of not understanding, just seeing if I would be faithful in that little things. And I still got a journey. I'm not arrived. Y'all just think I still got a journey. I just shared a lot of stuff, but but it's just been an amazing journey, man. To think that my life would look like it is today is beyond words. Like, God is just, His grace has totally restored me. Like, there's been a lot of stuff that's transpired in between that and my deliverance, but it's been such a good journey, man. It's been so worth it. So,
well. Michael, I will say that if anyone knows me, it's not often I'm speechless. It's one of the most amazing stories I've ever heard. As I've sat here, just the struggle, the ups, the downs, and then to see where you are. Your stories are exactly why we wanted to start this, because so many people need to see and hear and know that it don't matter how dark it gets, it don't matter how long it takes, God can restore you and take you to levels that aren't even imaginable. I mean, from where you were to where you are now at Crossgates is absolutely unbelievable, and they're very lucky to have you over there.
Thank you.
You were mentioning that you're going on a mission trip.
I am.
Tell us some more about that.
I am. So May 10th, we're leaving for a mission trip to the Czech Republic. We're going to be in Prague for 2 days. We're going to be sharing the message of Christ's love. You know, like I've said it multiple times, man. He lived a perfect life that I couldn't live. He died the sacrificial death that I wouldn't, and he was raised again on the third day. You know, because he loved us. You know, and so we're going to go share that message with some college kids the first couple days, and then we're going to be moving on to some surrounding towns from Prague, and we're going to be going into some high schools. I don't know if they're called high schools over there or not, but that's that age, and we're going to be able to invite some kids to a camp where we're also going to be, of course, with the intent to be able to share the gospel with them, to share the love and passion that Christ has for them, that they are God's treasured possession, that he loves them, that he's got a plan for them. And so, yeah, that's the idea of the
that's a beautiful
mission trip.
That's a beautiful mission.
So it's going to be exciting. I'm definitely excited. I do expect God to do a lot of good things. I do believe that this generation that is coming up is vital for where the body of Christ is going to go. And so just to think about, you know, last couple Saturdays ago, I got a chance to go with a guy from another church and 4 youths. And I brought my little 6-year-old, and we went over to the Pearl Outlet Mall and went on a treasure hunt. And, of course, we were hunting for God's treasure, and so we got a chance to go pray for people and just love on people, tell them that God loved them, that Jesus has a plan and a purpose for their life, that they're a treasure, that they're valuable, and man, just to see the encouragement that it brought to people's just everything, man. They're just so shocked and taken back. There's people out there doing that, and but I share that because we got done. We did it from like 10 to 12:30. And the high school kids, there was like 15 to 17 of the age, or 15 to 18. And they were so fired up with the Holy Spirit that when we got done, they were already planning. They were going to Walmart. They were going to go pray for more people. Sunday, I talked to them after this, and they said they went till 10 o'clock that night praying for people all over town.
Come on.
And just sharing the love of Christ with people. And I was like, that's who I'm going to share the gospel with, is that same age group.
Yep.
You know, you get a hold of 10 of them, you know, it's like, think about the impact they could have in a culture that's just gone mad. You know, it's just powerful to think
So when
about.
I think mission trip, I think all expenses paid, vacation. So how does that work?
No,
like exactly?
I'm in the process of raising funds for it. I think I don't know exactly the number that I'm at now, but I got to raise $2,400 to go.
So you've got to fund it yourself.
Well, God's going to fund it. I'm believing God's going to fund it, but I need support. So is. I can't go without support. You know, prayer and financial support are crucial. I don't think I have all that information right on me for to be able to give to that, but it is through Crossgates Baptist Church. Is what it's ran through. So we can try to see if there's something we can post for that if anybody's interested in doing that. Or
yeah, if anyone's listening and they want to support Michael and that mission trip, you can reach out through any of the Save One social media, stuff like that, and I'll get you in touch with Michael or David Cherry, whoever needs to be that contact. But I'll put them in contact with you and link over, and as well as whenever we make some posts, we'll link your social media stuff.
Okay.
That way somebody can get in touch with you.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So, well, guys, look, I think we're at the time point where we're going to call it a day. But again, man, thank you so much.
Yeah. For
what you've shared. It's a powerful story. It's going to help a lot of people.
I just want to, with that, and you said it, but I don't know who's listening or how many people are, but listen, you're never too far gone. You know, like there's nothing that can ever separate you from the love of God. And so, like, if you're in that place where you're isolated, you're alone, you're feeling depressed, anxious, just cry out. Just say, Jesus, save me. You know, like, he is our deliverer. Galatians 1:4, it says that it was the will of God the Father that Christ come to deliver us from this present evil age. And, I firmly believe that this present evil age, like depression, anxiety, addictions, loneliness, are all included. Those are all products of an evil age. And so if you are in that, just cry out to Jesus, man, save me, and he will. He will rescue you. He will deliver you. And just reach out to some people to get you plugged in with a community that can help you walk through those steps. So, you have a plan and a purpose for your life. So,
Amen.
yeah.
All right. Well, thank y'all, and hope y'all enjoyed the episode, and we'll see y'all next week.
Awesome.